Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Yes, you're very welcome along to this week's episode of Friday Night Racing, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Visit hri.ie. Love every racing moment, and the hashtag is every racing moment. I'm delighted to say our guest this week is John Allen. John, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Yeah, come on. Good day, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, good. Also with us as ever, Johnny Ward. Johnny, how are you?
Hey, Ger, how are you getting on?
Very good. John, you're on holidays, but not really. You're like the hardest working man in racing. You've come all the way from the other side of the world and you've decided that you need to get back on a horse.
Oh, yeah, look, a little bit of a working holiday, I suppose. Yeah, look, I've had a bit of time off, so I'm away for 9 weeks, so I suppose try and keep my eye in a little bit.
Was it always your intention when you, so just for people who don't know, you've been down in Australia for a while and we'll get to that in a minute, but when you come back up, was it always your intention to try and get a few rides here just to keep the eye in, or were you like getting a little bit itchy?
Yeah, look, a little bit. Normally when I come home, I only get home for 2 or 3 weeks, so kind of I made the decision this year with, obviously with COVID, I haven't been home with 3 years. I was going to try and spend a bit more time at home, so yeah, look, probably 9 weeks is a long time to have off, so yeah, just trying to keep my eye in a little bit. With
COVID, a lot of us tried to integrate new things into our lives, some successfully, some less so successfully. Have you thought about maybe coming back to live in Ireland, or is it actually not really on your radar at all? You're kind of happy where you are. How's that working out?
Yeah, look, probably not at this stage. Look, I'm going pretty well over there. I'm engaged to an Australian girl, so I'm not sure if I could convince her to come live in Cork for the winter, but look, we'll see how we go. At the moment I'm happy enough and going well over there, so but you never know what the future might hold.
We all know that's the end of that. There's no chance.
I just bring her here for the summer months, see her let her see the best side of the country.
Yeah, West Cork in summer you could convince somebody to move down there, but I'm not quite sure Australians like our winters so much. It's not quite the fair trade-off.
Probably not. But anyway, we'll see how we go.
So, where have you got anything specifically booked? How are you getting rides over the next few weeks? Make your pitch here, because we know the entire racing community tunes in on a Friday afternoon or a Friday evening. So, go for it.
Oh, look, it's pretty tough going, to be honest. Obviously, there's very few spare rides going. Most yards have their jockeys. So, look, to be honest, I'm just relying on a few friends of mine and lads I maybe used to ride for years ago to give me a few rides. So look, I'm not overly worried on how many rides I can get. Just yeah, look, obviously Galway's coming up. I'd like to have a couple of rides around there, and we'll see how we go from there.
Has the scene changed much when you returned, Johnny? Was it much the same as you remember it?
Oh, look, I never even rode on the flat when I was here, really. So certainly a lot of new faces in the jockeys room. Anyhow, plenty of young lads running around there that I couldn't tell you who was who, but yeah, look, plenty of old faces around too, so it was good to catch up with a lot of lads that I hadn't probably met in a long time.
What was it like being back in the weighing room in Ireland?
Yeah, look, probably a bit different. As I said, like it's completely different weigh room than when I was around. Like it's been a good 10 years now since I've probably ridden on a full-time basis over here. So and that was over jumps as well. So flat weigh rooms, there's a few old faces there, but certainly not a lot of new younger lads that are trying to get up through the ranks.
It's interesting. Obviously, you went to Australia and made such a success of it, but I guess you were just one of a number of jockeys when you left. That it wasn't easy because of the golden generation of jockeys you were riding with at that time. Yeah, look,
like when I went initially, I've never had the intention of probably staying this long, but it was just a case of, look, I wasn't doing very great at home and it was becoming a bit of a struggle, and it was just kind of a change of scenery, see how things went. And yeah, luckily enough, it did work out for me, and look, I'm still there 10 years later. So yeah, look, it can be a tough game when things aren't going well. So sometimes you have to, I suppose, look outside the box a little bit.
Tell us a little bit about that. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. Same thing, Ger, actually. Yeah. How long was it in the process, so in your mind, like, I might do this, and how long did it take you to convince yourself to do it?
A little bit. Like, to be honest, I always had it in my. Obviously, when you're a jockey, you're kind of thrown into straight away out of school, into working with horses, and you never really get a whole lot of time off. Maybe a week here, a week there to go on holidays or somewhere like that. But I always had a bit of a interest in doing a bit of traveling and seeing a bit of the world. So I suppose it took a while to really nail down and say I'd go somewhere. But at the time, I remember I had a few friends in Australia who were enjoying it out there, and the eventual push I got, there was an advertisement on the racing post one week looking for jump jockeys to come to Australia. So at the time, I'm not sure who rang me. I think Stephen Gray might have rang me. He decided he was going, and I think myself, Stephen, and Kenny Whelan actually headed out at the same time. So at that time, I was only planning going for 6 months. Their jump season only lasts for 6 months over there. So it was just a case to see, how I get on. I felt I had nothing to lose. And I came back after the 6 months and I had done quite well. So I decided I'd kind of try and move out there on a permanent basis. I think that was 2012, and try and make a go of it.
So the 6 months were actually the bit that it was like a trial period for you. Do I like it out here? Am I good out here? And actually that both ended up going quite well. Is it easy enough then when you decide that you want to go back to get visas and all that sorted out?
It can be a bit of... Yeah, look, once you go through the right processes and do everything right, it can be... I think it's okay for your first couple of years, but when you start looking into trying to become a resident, and obviously I'm a citizen now, it can be a bit more difficult. But once you do everything by the book, it's I didn't find it too difficult anyway. Obviously, I had people helping me, and it does cost a bit of money, but it was certainly worth it.
I was going to say, I think it also helps when you're successful. That's the Australians. They do love people to come and add to the success of the nation, which is obviously, we should talk about that now. Before I get on to how well it's gone for you in Australia, will you talk us a bit about how you actually got into racing? Because you kind of said you went straight from school into racing. Had you been, was it jockey a dream job of yours when you were 5, 6, 7 years of age?
Probably not when I was that young, but I always had an interest. I played a lot of sport as a kid, and my father had us off playing every sport under the sun, really: hurling, football, handball, and was we had no direct involvement in racing, but we were always involved. We always had ponies and used to do hunting and pony club. My mother and a few people actually set up the local pony club when we were kids. I give them a mention. Ireland Pony Club, I think they're 30 years running next year. So so we always had ponies. No direct involvement in racing. We used to go to the local point to points and maybe a few of the local racetracks once or twice a year. But it wasn't until I was probably 13 or 14 and I got just a summer job and kind of a job on the weekends with local trainer Sean O'Brien, who was just down the road from my place at home, and kind of from there then I got a little bit more interest in the racing side of things, and got into the pony racing and stuff like that. And from there on then it was just a case of wanting to be a jockey. And how quickly did you progress through the ranks? So when you leave school, is it automatic, that's it, that's what we're doing? Is that a conversation with your ma going, it's your fault you set up the pony club, what are you talking about? Look, pretty much they were always quite supportive. Look, they made sure I finished school all right, but I'd done 2 or 3 years pony racing, and I think my last year of pony racing I was just finished school maybe, and I got injured, and I think but once that pony racing season was over, I got my conditional license and worked. Done a few months for Pat Doyle, and then went working for Frances Crowley originally, but she moved to the Curragh. I was only there a couple of months, and then for her father, Joseph Crowley. Okay, and so when you were again at that stage deciding and doing pony racing, was it always going to be jumps? Was it National Hunt automatically? In retrospect, might you have gone in the flat direction if you'd known you were going to be as good at it? Yeah, a little bit. Look, I suppose it was just my upbringing. I'm from middle of Cork, and no one had any interest in flat racing down there. We were always going to points and jump racing, and I suppose that's what I probably earned to be, was a jump jockey. Maybe if I was growing up in the Curragh or something like that, I might have gone down the flat route initially. But I suppose that's kind of what I dreamt of when I was a kid, or when I was out hunting the ponies or drag hunts or whatever you'd be doing. And so how was your weight at that time then, Johnny? Sorry? How was your weight when you started off? I was probably a bit over 9 stone, probably not light, but 9 stone, 9 I was able to claim off. Minimum at that stage was 9-7, claiming 7 off it. So I was able to do that comfortable enough when I started. So I was probably around the 9 stone mark, I reckon.
And who were the senior jockeys in the weighing room when you started?
Who were the senior? Well, I suppose Charlie Swan might have just be coming to the end. He might have ridden for a little bit. Obviously, you had Ruby and Barry Gerdie were kind of hitting their peak at that stage, and still people like Shea Barry, Tommy Tracy, all those lads. There was no shortage of good riders there now.
It's super competitive to be going into that environment. And is that intimidating? Is that inspiring? How did you respond to that?
Yeah, look, it's probably intimidating initially, but you kind of have to aspire to be like them and be as good as them. You know that they were obviously riding at the top of their game, so you always try to learn as much as you could from them.
And were you good? Like when you look back, were you like at what point do you go, I can do this now?
Look, probably I had good success initially as a conditional. I think it was my first season riding. I was second to Robert Power in the conditionals title. But kind of look, once my claim went, I kind of quieted down a little bit for me. Maybe I should have done a few things differently. But look, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Who knows if I'd have been going better and riding winners, I might have never ended up in Australia and become as successful as I did. So
well, when you
met the missus,
springs and roundabouts.
Totally, yeah. But it's interesting to look back on those because they're always sliding door moments. When you say done things differently, would you have tried to hold on to your claim a bit longer, maybe?
Yeah, look, possibly, or maybe look, just move to England, or look, I don't know. Look, there's loads of things you could have done different, but look, I'm happy with the way things worked out. There's always something you look back at and say maybe you should have done this or should have done that, but prefer to look forward and back most of the time.
Yeah, no problems. We will ask you to look back a little bit on your time in Australia. So how do you go from being a jumps jockey in Australia those first 6 months and then, okay, it's a short season. Is that the automatic thing? If you want to stay, you have to get on the flat?
Yeah, look, I suppose I went out in 2011 initially, rode the jump season there. It's a pretty limited, it's a bit like America, like there's limited races. There's probably only 70 or 80 jump races a season. And kind of when I came back then the following year, kind of towards the back end of the jump season, when I decided I was going to stay on, like jump season there probably runs from March to September. So when I decided I was going to stay on from September on, I thought I might try just work a bit harder, get my weight down and see could I start getting a few rides in the flat. Look, it was pretty slow process initially. I was only baiting around the bush, as they said over there, and just like riding probably limited horses, limited races. But look, it was a slow process, but gradually started getting better rides and a few winners, and it just kind of snowrolled from there. And
how did that happen? Well, like if you look back now, what's the break that takes you off the mediocre horses and gets you on the good ones?
Just, I suppose, just work hard, continue riding winners, and look, I got support from some good trainers, and I was lucky probably when I arrived over there, I worked for a trainer that kind of was on the up, and he went from probably having 80 or 90 horses when I started to up to 300 and 400 horses in work by the time in the space of 3 or 4 years. So as his business grew, he probably provided me with more opportunities as well.
What's the racing landscape like over there compared to here, actually?
Look, I always say, like, it's there's a lot of racing. It's quite, when you consider, like, Australia, obviously, it's a very big country. It's got but it only has a population of 20 million, which is, well, I don't know what you call, that's probably like 4 or 5 times the size of Ireland, or population of Ireland. But every Saturday, there's a minimum of nearly 20 race meetings on. Like, and look, they're in different pockets of the country, and say you kind of ride where you're based. You don't necessarily travel a huge amount. So say, for instance, I'm based in Victoria, which is probably, say, that's outside Melbourne, and Victoria, New South Wales are probably the main racing hubs, but like they all race every day of the week and maybe 2-3 meetings of a Saturday. So there is no shortage of racing there, and it's a very big industry for, like, I suppose, like here, for the size of the country and for the population of the country. I'd say it's a very big industry.
And you see the challenges facing, we say, like US racing, tracks are closing down, a lot of drug issues over there, and just like struggling to keep people, I suppose, interested and in the game. You see in the UK, catastrophic field sizes again this week, massive concerns. It seems like in Australia, it just seems on a firmer footing there, maybe with the betting industry as well.
Yeah, look, I think that's the real probably winner for them is the levies they have on all the bettings. Like on obviously they have on all the betting pools, there's a certain levy paid back into racing, which is, and to be honest, they are a pretty betting mad country. So look, there's a lot of money getting reinvested in the industry. So yeah, as you said, like a lot of the racing organisations are going from strength to strength over there.
And like they're kind of I've never been to Australia, but they're kind of like betting terminals in pubs and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah. So like so say for instance, you have your Paddy Power, Ladbrokes here, like that's all online over there. There's no like all the betting terminals in the pubs. They're called TABs, which would be equivalent to your tote here, I suppose. Like so that's all owned. I don't know the complete ins and outs of it now, but as far as like that's nearly owned by the racing industry or the racing bodies, and everything that's kind of made out of that, or the turnover on that is kind of pumped back into racing and sports. And even I believe like even the online gambling, like they all have to a certain percentage has to be given back to the industry. So I suppose that's why the industry's been able to thrive at the moment.
It's interesting, Jared. There was a race in, I think there was a race tomorrow in, I forget the track, I think it might be Newbury, that was essentially boycotted by trainers because the prize money was so low. And its prize money is a massive problem in Britain. But over there, as Johnny is saying, that basically they have a tote system that works really well. But even bookmakers in New South Wales, for example, are compelled to lay a certain amount, a minimum, on horse racing. So you don't have the pathetic restrictions that are imposed on punters over here for like winning a few quid here or there. So like Australia, there's definitely an awful lot for us to learn if we could follow their road, I think.
So it feels, Johnny, from what you're saying, that the racing industry is on a very sound footing and that it's an industry that can look forward with some certainty.
Yeah, certainly. Look, some of the New South Wales and Victoria are definitely to the forefront of that. They're probably the biggest industry. So maybe some of the smaller regions where the interest or there mightn't, the smaller clubs might be getting waned out a small bit, but look, that's kind of the way everything's going these days, isn't it? It's the big get bigger and the small lads can struggle to survive sometimes. But yeah, look, it's certainly thriving at the moment. There's been no decrease in prize money since I've been there. Anyhow, it's just been upgraded every year, so certainly going well.
So apart from the fact that your timing was good in getting in with a trainer who's going through a transformational period in the numbers of horses that he has, and you would assume the quality goes up with that number as well, you obviously have to change from being a jumps jockey to a flat jockey. Is there anything different for you, or is it actually just the same job in terms of how you train, in terms of how you think about approaching the race tactically? Were there differences you had to make, or did it actually just be, for you, it was a seamless, it's the same skill essentially?
Yeah, look, the fundamentals I think are pretty much the same. The big thing was just my weight. Like I really had to work on it and still do. Like, so when I probably went for 25 or 6 years eating what I liked and never having to worry about what I had to eat or anything like that, to probably restricting what I had to eat and just being a lot more healthier, and I suppose watching what I eat and made sure that I went from never weighing myself to getting up every morning, just jumping on a scale to see what weight I was. So yeah, look, I suppose that was definitely the main difference. How
did you do that? Was that like get in touch with a dietitian, or was it just read books? Was it talk to other jockeys? Or how do you actually, because it's a fundamental, the weight loss industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some people are very good at it and the rest of us aren't.
Yeah, look, it's I suppose you can get pockets of information from different people, but eventually you kind of learn what your body can do and can't do and what you can cope with. And look, you can surprise yourself what your body's capable of doing when you do it. So look, I kind of do what works for me. I try to eat healthy. I won't say I starve myself or anything like that. I kind of prefer to work it off rather than not eat. But look, I just had to make a few changes, and I suppose just once you can keep pretty disciplined, it certainly works.
When you say
what advice would you give to people like listening in who they have no interest necessarily in racing or sport, but actually do want to lose weight?
Discipline, I'd say, which is hard to be like. It's easy for me to say discipline when I'm like, it's a lot easy when you have a goal, you know. So I have an end goal to make this weight, and you know that's my job. Like I suppose I can find it hard if I'm not riding on the weekend, I'm not riding night to stay disciplined. But I think just discipline and exercise as well obviously makes a huge difference.
I was going to ask about that. So when you say
like you still got to enjoy. Like I don't completely rule out bad stuff. Like I still eat some chocolate, and like you still have to enjoy what you eat. Sometimes I think if your diet is too boring, it becomes too monotonous altogether.
Yeah. After Tommy Walsh earlier in the week, Ger, it's been a real team this week.
Absolutely. Tommy was saying that he had a fry every day.
I listened to it the other day.
Who hasn't listened to it this week?
Much of a character.
He was in good form, all right. And so that bit about the exercise, that's kind of been a bit of a sea change in the last 15, 20 years, that actually working out, doing weights, that's all good for you because it creates a sustainable body as opposed to, the starve, get down to the weights, ride the race, eat something after it.
Yeah, and look, it's probably mental health wise too. It makes a big difference if you can obviously get out and exercise and just being out in the open and doing something. Certainly, I prefer to do it that way anyhow than just sitting in the sauna or sitting in a bath or something like that.
Given how successful you've been in Australia, is there a part of you that wishes you'd gone to Australia as like a 20, 21, 22-year-old and just embraced that part of your life? Or has actually this all been perfect? You got to live in Ireland for as long as you did. You get to go to Australia now as a more mature individual who's ready to make those commitments and those changes and understands what you need to do.
Yeah, look, you always have, I suppose. I'm not really sure. Maybe I could have gone earlier, but who knows? It mightn't have worked out then either. Or maybe I should have been riding on the flat from the start and not worried about riding over jumps. But look, that's all water under the bridge now. It's just a case of things have worked out well, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to the next couple of seasons and hopefully can continue the way they were.
17 Group 1 wins, including the Victoria Derby in 2018 and the Cox Plate for Joseph O'Brien just last October. So it's been a sensational career. I don't want anybody to leave this think you're going grand in Australia. You're doing really, really well.
Yeah, I won the Derby this year as well. So obviously I've had good success. Obviously, been lucky enough to get on some good horses, and winning the Cox Plate last year was obviously super for Joseph. COVID might have played a part in that. If it hadn't been COVID, he might have brought down one of his own jockeys. But luckily enough, he entrusted me with the riding it, and it was great to win one of. Obviously, that class is probably one of the main races in Australia. So lucky enough to win it. Just
after the Melbourne Cup in terms of popularity, that's the level it's at.
Yeah, it's probably class is probably. I suppose if you were to rate him, I'd go back to me jumping days now. The Melbourne Cup might be like the Grand National, and the Cox Plate is probably classed as maybe the Gold Cup. So obviously it was a huge thrill to win, and very grateful for obviously Joseph and all his team to give me the opportunity. He
won by a short head. Like, did he strike you as the horse that essentially was very close to winning? I'm right here, 5 Group or Grade 1s in 4 different countries and 3 different continents. He was so close to achieving that. Yeah, look, he was obviously a horse. Like, you probably hadn't seen the best of the horse in Europe before. Obviously, he didn't run a lot as a 3-year-old, and Joseph travelled him to America. And look, I was really impressed with that win. So, doing the form obviously for the race prior, he was definitely a horse on the upward curve. And he's proved since the Cox Plate what a good horse he was. What a good horse he is. So, it was good to see him obviously go on and win in Royal Ascot and probably get the recognition that he probably deserves.
And so you're down for 9 weeks. You've obviously a good bit of time left of those holidays before you go back, and then the new season just starts again and kicks into overdrive. Yeah, look, the season runs all year round. Really, it's class. It goes from 1st of August to 1st of August, but it's winter time. It's winter time this time of year now, so it's probably as good as time as any to take a break. But look, they still race every day of the week, and
But once I get back early August, ideally I should be probably going home a couple of weeks earlier. But a couple of my friends of mine are getting married, so I'm going to hang around for that. And look back into, which is essentially the Spring Carnival, which is probably the main racing carnival of the year over there.
The way that technology has improved, it's not a bad time over the last decade to be living on the other side of the world with the improvements of it. And now everybody's smartphones and everybody's used to making video calls. Has homesickness been an issue for you over the years, or actually has it been okay because of...
Look, every now and again you certainly do get homesick, and there's certainly different things I miss. But I suppose the fact I've been going well and been quite successful over there definitely helps. I think if I was probably struggling to get rides and things were a bit harder to come by, you'd probably be definitely more homesick. But look, I do enjoy getting home as much as I can. I normally get home once a year, but obviously with COVID the last 3 years, that's been a bit of an issue. As you said, look, technology and stuff has come on in leaps and bounds. So probably talk to your family as much now as what I would when I am at home. But it's pity the plane flight wasn't a bit shorter. It would be a lot easier.
Teleportation, that's the only bit of technology that we were promised in science fiction movies in the 50s that hasn't actually happened yet. One last thing, obviously, you know, in most sports, the age you're at, late 30s, mid to late 30s, would be like, oh, what are you going to do when you retire? But when flat racing, like, you could go another 10 years here if you continue with the diet and the regime you're on.
Yeah, look, I'd certainly have no aspirations to retire yet. Anyway, I suppose as in flat jockey terms, I'm quite young yet. I'm only riding on the flat with 7 or 8 years, so hopefully I have a few more years left ahead of me. Anyway,
so you don't need to think about a career yet, or like what your involvement in racing will be when you finish as a jockey, or is that something that kind of you start now anyway?
Yeah, look, I have an interest in look, I know nothing else but horses, to be honest. I wouldn't be qualified to stack shelves in the local shop even. So, look, whatever I'll do after racing will still be involved with horses anyway, and race horses. So, whether I go down the training path or I'm not sure. That's I think it's a hard job to get into, and certainly takes a lot of time and hard work. So, look, I'm not fully sure. I haven't really thought about it, but whatever it'll be, it'll definitely be involved in racing anyway, I think.
Very good. So you're looking for rides in Galway at the Galway Festival, and maybe in the Curragh before you head back, if anybody out there wants a championship winning, Grade 1 winning jockey available. Very unusual to get a jockey of your talent just available.
Yeah, there's plenty of good riders here, but look, hopefully I can pick up a few. Look, anything I can get will be much appreciated. But just looking forward now to enjoying the rest of my few weeks here, and hopefully this good weather can last. Yeah,
well, you brought it with you, Johnny. Good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, Johnny.
No worries, guys. Thanks for the call.
It's Johnny Allen there giving us some thoughts on the racing situation in Australia at the moment. Friday Night Racing is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie and the hashtag is every racing moment. Johnny Ward is staying with us. We'll be back after this.
By Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Alright, Friday Night Racing is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie and the hashtag is every racing moment. Johnny, it's interesting to hear how things are run and done on the other side of the world and what lessons can be learned. I know football, we're always interested in Irish football, certainly over the last half decade or so, or even longer. Niall Quinn has been talking about putting a levy on all gambling, and maybe if people understood that there was a direct relationship between money that was ring-fenced from the gambling firms and it going straight back into sport, it would be cleaner and more obvious to people.
Yeah, see, the racing industry is funded on an anachronism, really, Ger, where for time immemorial, really, people bet on horse racing and not much else in these shores anyway. So the betting shop was literally a smoke-filled room. The cliche was true, and you went in and you backed a horse, you probably couldn't even watch the race, but that's what you did. You did not go in to bet in running on a women's football match, which you do now, increasingly at the expense of racing, really, or certainly in terms of the racing share of the pie, it's getting far smaller. And I mean, if I put up a horse in the racing post, say a horse, the Little Yank, who is running tonight, I put him up in the paper in the racing post at like 6-4 or something like that. So I got the price a little bit wrong. But all the bookmakers went 4-1. And the reason they all went 4-1 is because they're essentially copying the first person to go up. So odds compilers are no longer in existence, and bookies basically are putting all their efforts into models and moving away from human interaction and moving away from racing in some respects. So they want more money on other sports because it's easier to make money than racing, basically. So racing is not entitled to the money it's gotten off the levy and the government the way it was, because people are betting on other sports. And I don't think anyone can argue that someone betting on the women's Euros, that money should go into racing. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It should go into like funding, women's soccer or, basically football in general. So we're going to have issues in this country because government will not for time immemorial be a massive backer of racing. So we do have to look to other countries. And Australia is definitely one that I think we could learn some things off. And the bookmakers could as well, where they actually have to lay bets on racing in some jurisdictions, such as New South Wales.
That was interesting, wasn't it? That's like that would put a proverbial cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah, well, the bookmakers, like, they've been able to get away with basically whatever they want to do. I mean, I work in the bookmaking industry as well myself, so maybe people accuse me of being a hypocrite, but like the inability to lay bets to people who are literally winning a few quid is pathetic, really. And if you read Aaron Rogan's book about Paddy Power, it'll give you a good example of the industry. So it's like, essentially in Australia, we certainly could go down that route in terms of like just making it a bit more equitable, I think, and a bit fairer, because I think a lot of people are put off betting on horse racing now because bookies just don't want to lay bets anymore.
All right, that's a long-running theme of the show here, and we've been talking about it a good bit. Let's talk about the actual racing over the course of the weekend. Busy few days ahead for Tote with the 2-day Judgment Irish Oaks meeting at the Curragh this weekend. A Tote sponsored card at Ballinrobe on Monday. Ballinrobe's race day starts at 5:30 with the Tote Always SP or Better claiming race, the first of 7 Tote races. And as usual, the Tote Always SP or Better guarantee will be available at the Curragh, Ballinrobe and all Irish race courses. See tote.ie for more. So for casual racing fans, Johnny, where does the Judgment, the Oaks meeting, where does this fit in the kind of calendar? Is this an endpoint for some of the really good horses? Is this a staging post for some of the progressive horses? What's the story?
Well, it's basically the equivalent of the Derby for fillies. Ironically enough, Tuesday, who would have she would have been favoured for this. I think she would have been favoured for this, definitely. She went to the Derby, which was unusual because Aidan O'Brien just didn't feel that his colts were good enough to beat Westover, and it turned out she wasn't either. But this is basically the Derby for fillies otherwise, and it's not a great renewal. I think the average rating is 103, so it's, for Group 1 standards, it's not very deep, but Magical Lagoon is favoured on the back of winning at Royal Ascot. I think she's trying to get money off the bookmakers. They will lay you a bet on this because it's a Group 1 or whatever. They should lay you a bet. She's odds against her. I mean, I really struggle to see how she's beaten. Jessica Harrington's stats, so just looking at this, for the month of, she had a very poor April, slightly better in May. In June, when Royal Ascot was running in Ireland, she had 11% strike rate. So far in July, her strike rate is 26%. She's winning with everything at the moment. So Magical Lagoon is probably in 10% better form than she was at Ascot, when she found loads for pressure after looking beaten. She loved the Curragh. And as much as it's a bit like the Derby, I don't think it's a great renewal, but I really fancy a horse in the race, and it's Magical Lagoon. Okay.
Where will we see these horses later in the year then?
It's kind of hard to know. Like, if she were impressive, she could come back for the Irish Champion Stakes. Could easily run in the Arc as well. 3-year-old fillies can definitely win the Arc, such as Zarkava. They get a nice fillies allowance to get a nice 3-year-old allowance. And I would say Jessica Harrington, who's quite an ambitious trainer and is happy to send horses around the world, I would say that is something that appeals to her if she wins well tomorrow, because obviously she'd probably need to. Desert Crown, who would have been, give or take, would have been favoured for the Arc or thereabouts. He suffered a setback, so maybe the race can cut up a little bit. The French Derby winner, he looks a good horse. He doesn't look an amazing horse. He scrambled home in the Eclipse, albeit a good renewal of the race. So you'd imagine that the good horses here could go to something like the Arc, if even maybe in the Champion Stakes. In terms of the also rans in the race, I mean, as I said, the ratings are 103 on average. She's rated 109, so most of them aren't really up to proper Group 1 company in the first place.
This is the Derby distance, right?
Yeah, and it's the exact same course and trip. And I mean, if you are going to the Curragh tomorrow with the weather as it is, it's going to be a great day out. I mean, a lot of people were complaining. They didn't have many complaints, I think, Derby Day, but one thing they were complaining about was it was really, really windy, and it was literally like your drink was being blown out of your hands.
It's windy in Ireland. What are you going to do?
It does, but tomorrow is there's basically, I think, there's very little wind. Anyone who's apt to do exercises and looks at the wind, they'll be very happy this week, because it's always windy in Ireland, but it isn't at the minute.
Okay, that was you complaining about it being windy. Was that?
No, but it was a genuine complaint. It was like the Curragh is a very open track, so and the stand doesn't really help you, and the wind is completely open both sides. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, in terms of climate change, I think the wind isn't something we should be that worried about at the moment.
There are, it seems, other things frying us as opposed to the wind at the moment. Right, anything else over the course of the weekend people should be looking out for?
That's about it. It's a really good card at Curragh. Obviously, Killarney continues. Beautiful racetrack down there. And then I mentioned the field size issues. You look at the field size in Britain tomorrow, it is worrying, Ger. And then obviously you mentioned Ballinrobe on Monday. Cracking racetrack as well. Lovely scenic racetrack and a brilliant place to go racing. And no harm to remind the locals as well which Connacht team's in the All-Ireland on Sunday week.
I'm sure you will have enjoyed it, and we'll enjoy it there. It is great, and we've been there, obviously. It's a Monday evening, it's glorious weather. It's going to continue into Monday, so a good thing for you to get out and do this weekend. Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. We'll see you next week at 3 o'clock on all our social channels, and of course at 8 p.m. on Friday evening. Until then, take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off. Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.